Hey, in this video we'll cover 17 stuttering techniques or strategies from the mainstream ones to not so traditional ones. I'll show and demonstrate them and we'll try to understand each of them so that you could see what could be helpful, useful and beneficial for you. And if you're using a technique that is not on the list, please leave a comment and let me know. So this is an overview where we'll try to understand each of the techniques. I'll be showing, explaining each of them. But of course, if you want to go deeper into a particular technique, go to my blog post where I'm giving links to the videos, more detailed videos about each of these strategies. And I also want to make it clear that you don't have to use all 17 techniques. It's not like speech therapy consists of 17 stuttering techniques. In fact, I have used, as a person who stutters, only one technique, the last one on the list. So buckle up, let's get started. Number 1, easy onset. The main idea is to start your speaking with an easy, relaxed stretch at the beginning. To demonstrate the techniques, we'll be playing with the phrase, where do you live? So applying an easy onset, it would sound like, where do you live? Where do you live? It's widely used by speech therapists, that's why I'm putting it first. The problem is how to bring it to real interaction. You see, I hear from people who stutter stories all the time, like they go to a speech therapist and he shows the technique and they say the phrase, the word fluently, smoothly, and the speech therapist goes like, you said it, you see, you can do it. And the person who stutters goes like, I know I can do it in principle, but when I get on stage or I pick up the phone, that's where the problem persists. Megan Washington, a singer, brings up another issue with smooth speech in her TEDx talk. She says that while using the technique, she feels like a fake. And the question is why? An easy onset is just an easy, relaxed prolongation of the first sound. It resembles singing to some extent, and she is a singer, and she doesn't stutter when she's singing. And she doesn't say that singing is a fake, just the opposite. She says that singing gives her this chance, a unique opportunity to express herself. Then why does an easy onset sound and feel unnatural and weird? Well, maybe because to some extent it is. You see, singing is meant to be assertive and expressive, and there is a rhythmical structure and a strong beat, and you feel those, strong points. And an easy onset is just a weak, easy onset start, and it does sound natural and a bit foreign to our regular, natural speaking style and speaking structure. So if you want to go deeper into easy onsets, there's a great video by Peachy Speechy. And if you want to learn more about singing and what we can pick and take from there, check out my video on that. Number 2, light contacts. The main idea, we want to start speaking with reduced tension in the vocal cords, in our mouth, in our lips, and articulators. As we're playing with the phrase, where do you live? It would go like, where do you live? You want to compare with tension and what? Where do you live? Where do you live? Light contacts are widely used by speech therapists the same way as easy onsets, and together with easy onsets, these are so-called fluency shaping techniques or strategies. The problem is still how to bring it to real interaction. And here, preparatory sets come into play. A preparatory set is just a set, a number of exercises, techniques, breathing, visualization, can be anything, light contacts, easy onsets. So you're practicing you're actually preparing yourself for real life interactions. You're trying to catch those feelings that you want to feel, want to have in real life then. And of course, it makes total sense. We want to upload something to our muscle memory so that then we can retrieve it from that muscle memory and feel it in real life. At the same time, I want you to notice that there is no interaction in this practice. It's somewhat close to reading out loud or talking to the mirror. I know we people sort of love those practices and they're great for sure, but there is no interaction in those practices. And what we're doing in the nutshell, we're trying to prove ourselves, like, I can do it, I can say it fluently. And you know it that we can practice for hours and feel great. But then, all of a sudden, at some point, get tense, and stuttering is coming back and is growing like a snowball again. So coming back to the light contact and how we bring it to real life, I want to mention the last technique here because the whole idea of it is to make sure that we feel great feelings, we catch those great feelings, not in our practice, but we take them, we create them in real interaction. I promised you a happy ending, so please stay to the end of this video. If you want to go deeper into light contacts, a great video by Peachy Speechy. If you want to go deeper into relaxation, I have a special video on that. Check it out. Number 3, pullouts. By using fluency shaping techniques, we're trying to prevent stuttering. But what do we do when it's already happening? That's where stuttering modification techniques or strategies come into play. So we want to be realistic with ourselves. No matter how much we practice, do easy onset, light contacts, preparatory sets, reading out loud, talk to the mirror, stuttering still can happen. And we don't want to freak out. We don't want to panic. We want, by stuttering modification strategies, we want to take ownership of stuttering. We want to take control of it by reshaping it, modifying it, and stuttering on our terms. So the main idea of the pullouts is to catch yourself stuttering, take notice of it, become aware of it, and then instead of forcing yourself through it, just gradually release the tension, apply easy onsets and light contact, and pull yourself out of that stuttering moment. So with our phrase, where do you live, it would look and sound like this. Understand that I'm stuttering. Where do you live? As easy onsets, as light contacts, pullouts are widely used by mainstream speech therapy. The problem is the same. It's easier said than done, especially because there's no way to really practice it with yourself. You can practice easy onsets, light contacts, reading out loud, talking to the mirror for hours. But this is happening already in real life, and that's where usually some tension, some panic kicks in. That's how stuttering works. So it's not that easy to apply it. Number 4, cancellation. The main idea is to repeat the word that you stuttered on one more time, applying fluency shaping, easy onset, light contacts, and say it with ease again. When we play with our phrase, where do you live, it might look and sound like this. Where do you live? I realize that I stuttered and I say it again. I cancel that one and I say it again. Where do you live? So I say it, try to apply easy onset, light contacts, say it with more ease. It's also widely used by speech therapy. The same problem, how to apply it in real life. The idea is to come back, not to be ashamed of it, not to be afraid of it, and to say it again. Idea is great, But in reality, it's easier said than done, especially because when you stutter, like, we have some tension in our body already. So there is a big chance, and it might feel like I'm gonna stutter again on this word. Why would I say it again? Another issue with cancellations is that it also interferes in the natural flow, natural interaction. For example, the moment might have already been gone, like I asked you, where do you live? And you said, Los Angeles, where do you live? And you say again, where do you live? Like, it's not relevant, right? So we've covered fluency shaping and stuttering modification techniques. These are the main strategies used by mainstream speech therapy. And some people say they're grateful, they love it, they use it. Some people say that they just got tired of practicing for hours those techniques and they just dropped them. Actually, both categories, I would say, stutter pretty much the same. So after applying these strategies, you might reasonably expect that you're still going to stutter with more ease, easier, maybe with more awareness, but still stutter. If you want to go deeper into cancellations, check out the resources that I have for you. But we don't stop there. Let's move to the next strategy. Number 5, breathing techniques. The main idea is that at the stuttering moment, especially in a block, we tend to stop the airflow. And by breathing techniques, we want to restore that airflow and this natural breathing cycle. As we're playing with the phrase, where do you live, it might look and sound like intensely inhaling right before I say it, and then saying the phrase on the exhale. So let's do it. Where do you live? Where do you live? And there is an argument whether it should be belly breathing, costal breathing, do we use the bell or not, maybe some other magic type of breathing. In general, belly breathing is considered to be good for singing and speaking. It's a great exercise. When you use it intentionally, it becomes a technique. Various speech stuttering programs like the McGuire program, Starfish Project, Alfaro, and some coaches use that. Even speech therapy can use those as well. And you can recognize the McGuire and Starfish graduates by this vigorous and exuberant inhale when they speak. The problem is, first of all, of course, to do it consistently all the time is quite a challenge. The other problem, many people see that vigorous inhale, say, no, that's weird, that's unnatural, I don't want to do it. And yeah, it might sound weird, but we want to recognize that 90% of stuttering is not the speech impediments. It's how you feel about stuttering. It's stuttering shame, fear of speaking, desire to hide it. So by making that vigorous and obvious inhale before you say the phrase, you're sending a powerful signal to your body, to your brain, to the other person you're talking to, that you're not ashamed, not just conceptually, but you're not ashamed, you're embracing that difference through that action. You're not ashamed of stuttering, you're not ashamed of working on your speech. So you're becoming more intentional, and that might be a problem for some on the one hand, but that's what makes it more powerful on the other hand. If you want to go deeper into breathing techniques, I have different resources for you, and I also have my own video on breathing exercises. You can check it out. Number 6, passive airflow technique. The idea is very close to breathing techniques, but here the focus goes not to the inhale, but only to the exhale. As we play with our phrase, where do you live, what you want to do is maybe to put your fingers here to feel you start exhaling, and then you say the phrase. So it looks like this. Where do you live? Right? So on top of that exhale, where do you live? you're saying the phrase. And I didn't mention that for breathing techniques, but it might be a problem for some people who inhale and just get stuck with all of that air. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that the inhale is meant to just normalize the speaking. We want to get to the exhale. When you're already breathing out, and you say on top of that, breathing out, your phrase or word, it's really hard to stutter when you are already breathing out. I've heard about this technique from Peter Lowe, but of course it can be used by speech therapists, can be part of speech therapy. The problem is that it takes quite some awareness and concentration on this technique. And it's a pretty much universal problem applied to all of the techniques, how to remember the technique in the real life interaction where we're engaging, where our focus goes to interaction. It should go there. It should not go to the technique and trying to remember it, trying to apply it at that time. That's where the last technique on the list really helps, really stands out from all other techniques, and I'm going to explain why it's so different. So if you want to go deeper into passive airflow technique, I have a couple of resources for you. You can check them out. Number 7, jump. The main idea is to skip the sound that you are getting stuck on. This is a stuttering modification technique, but instead of pulling yourself out of the sound, pulling it in like in pullouts, you simply drop it and move on. And compared to cancellations, you're not repeating the sound, you're not coming back, you're just keep going forward. As we were playing with our phrase where do you live, it could sound and look like where do you live. I've heard about this technique from Paul Brocklehurst. The problem is, as Paul mentions in his video where he talks about it, that sometimes people just maybe don't understand you. In this case, you'll need to repeat the phrase right from the beginning. And Paul doesn't mention that, but I think that's my interpretation. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that even when we're not yet stuck on "wa," but we feel the anticipation, like I know I'm going to stutter on this "wa." Maybe we can drop in this technique this "wa" right away. So instead of "where do you live," we could say "where do you live." So right from the beginning, we're saying "air," not "woo." Just skipping over, jumping over this "wa." And why I want to bring it up, because that's exactly the exercise, one of the exercises I'm doing with my students, where we're playing with the hard sounds, with the consonants, with the role that we want to give to the consonants, actually. You can play right now, putting your mouth, your lips into the "wa" position, and saying from there, air. Not "wa," but air. Where? It becomes where, actually, so you can play air, where, feeling how little of that "wa" we want to have there. So if you want to go deeper into the jump technique, here's the video by Paul Brocklehurst. And if you want to go deeper how to address and play with the hard sounds, with the consonants, I have a separate video on that. You can check it out. Number 8, connected speech. The main idea is to feel how we go from one vowel sound to another vowel sound in our speaking. As we play with our phrase, where do you live, it's not where do. Where do goes to do, and we go from air, do, to that oo. Where do you live? This is not quite a technique, this is just a great exercise. This is the exercise I do with my students to feel that continuous airflow in our speaking, and I guess it could be used by speech therapy as well. The problem is, as always, how to remember that technique in real life interaction. Ideally want to give our brain the foundation, how to make sure we feel that continuous airflow in real life speech. That's where the last technique on the list really helps. So if you want to go deeper into this connected speech and play with it, here's a great resource by Accents Way English. Check it out. Number 9, slide and hidden hold. The main idea is that instead of trying to get through the sound, we're staying in the sound and release tension this way. For example, as we're playing with our phrase where do you live, we could say where do you live? Where do you live? Sliding from this whoa, staying on it, and then getting to the phrase. Or if you feel a little more tension, you could say whoa, where do you live? You can play with yourself a little bit. Whoa. Whoa by itself is not scary. There is no tension in it. The tension happens, or we feel the tension, only when we're trying to get through it, and we feel that we cannot. So by sliding, we're staying there. We feel like, I'm not afraid of it. I'm not ashamed of it. There's like no worries. We're releasing that tension this way. Some call this technique block and release. Some call it block and let go. It's the same thing. It's not fluency shaping because we're not just trying to say it fluently. We're staying in the sound. It's not quite stuttering modification because stuttering is not yet happening. It's something in between, maybe closer to stuttering modification because we're reshaping it. But it's a little closer to intentional stuttering or stuttering on purpose. It's widely used by speech courses and programs like McGuire, Starfish, and others. The problem is exactly the same as with breathing techniques. Some might argue that it's too weird, too obvious. At the same time, this is what is making it so powerful. You're not ashamed of it. You're not afraid of it. You're embracing your uniqueness, your difference. If you want to go deeper into slide and hidden hold, I have a couple great resources. You can check them out. Number 10, stuttering on purpose. The main idea is to face the fear of stuttering on the one hand and take control over your speaking. As we're playing with our phrase, I could say with intentional stuttering, where do you live? On wha, I stuttered. Or where do you live? On duh, I stuttered. So instead of blocking on wha, for example, I chose very intentional repetition. It is used by quite some speech therapists, and if you give it a thought in a very broad sense, any training speech, any technique is stuttering on purpose because you're stuttering on your terms. The problem is, of course, at the very core of stuttering, we typically don't want to stutter. And some people even say, what? You want me to stutter even more? No, I don't. It's not about stuttering more. It's about stuttering way easier. And to understand it a little better, I want you to notice what you feel when you watch a horror movie compared to an action movie. In a horror movie, you see the character is running away from this danger, is haunted by this danger. In an action movie, no matter how powerful the source of that danger is, the protagonist is facing that danger, is facing that fear, going for it. And you can feel that it's really hard to win acting from the place of fear. There could be a miracle and you escape it, but you sense that when you face that fear, you act from a place of courage, your chances to win increase dramatically. And in an action movie, you feel that satisfactory resolution no matter how the movie ends. It really doesn't matter what you see on the outside. What really matters is that inside, you feel that you have already won. So this is just food for thought, and if you want to go deeper into stuttering on purpose, I'm giving you a couple of resources. You can check them out. Number 11, pausing and phrasing. The main idea is to split your speaking into pieces. In general, because it is easier to say a short piece than a long piece. And people who stutter typically are trying to say as much as they can into that fluency gap, which creates a lot of rush and makes speaking worse. We want to feel that there's no time pressure, there's no rush. So as we're playing with the phrase, "Baby, where do you live?" is too short. Let's take a new one. Let's try to speak this way. That's the phrase, so I'm saying it. Let's try to speak this way. To this group of videos on pausing and phrasing, I included Steve Harvey's advice. I was thinking where to put it. And I think it's about pausing, but it's not pausing in your phrase, it's pausing before you start the phrase. So she says, say what you want to say to yourself first, ideally 3 times, and then say it to another person. Pausing and phrasing is widely used both by speech therapy and by different speech programs and courses. The problem is that even though it's an amazing strategy, it doesn't solve the problem in principle. Like, what do I do if I cannot even start the first sound in the phrase? Or if I stutter, a person who stutters is pressed to continue faster with a bit of a rush because I already had an involuntary pause. It feels like I don't have any more legitimate right for my own pausing. So if you want to go deeper into pausing and phrasing, I'm giving you a couple of resources. You can check them out. Number 12, emphasize and public speak. The main idea of emphasizing is to give your brain and speech mechanism space and time to align. Basically, it is a prolongation, which doesn't sound like prolongation, which sounds beautiful, just awesome. On top of that, emphasizing creates automatically space for a pause. And I don't quite like pausing and phrasing as such, because as such, they can be pretty flat and monotonous, but when you add emphasizing, you're forced to make a pause. Let's say our phrase, let's try to speak this way. Emphasizing. Let's try to speak this way. Each time, let's try. Automatically, there is a pause. I don't need to think about it. I don't need to remember. I need to make pauses. I need to do phrasing. You don't need to remember anything. Once you start emphasizing, pauses appear by themselves. I've heard about emphasizing from Larry Stein, but of course, public speaking coaches talk about it a lot, and it can even be used in speech therapy as well. The problem is that it's not a stuttering technique. It's not meant to protect us from stuttering. Yet it leads us to a very profound idea. Larry Stein, as he talks about his stuttering journey, he says that he didn't try to escape stuttering, avoid stuttering, prevent stuttering. Instead, what he tried was to emulate public speakers that he liked. And he tried to public speak in everyday interactions. So as you're reading out loud, talking to the mirror, or doing some other practice, it's a great question to ask yourself. Is it defensive or offensive? Reading out loud might look like very proactive. It's awesome, it's great, but if you give it a thought, it's still defensive. Going live in the Free From Stutter Facebook group, for example, or recording yourself asking a question in a grocery store, or recording your phone call, that is proactive and offensive. Joining Toastmasters or the Free From Stutter Speaking Club or starting a YouTube channel or a podcast. That's for sure offensive. Taking speech therapy or joining a stuttering program can also be quite offensive if you get quite some of that public speaking exposure there. So if you want to go deeper into emphasizing and public speaking in general, I have a couple of resources for you. You can check them out. Number 13, engaging your body gestures and eye contact. The main idea is to become more expressive, more assertive, and elevate your speaking confidence this way. This strategy goes hand in hand with the previous one, emphasizing, public speaking, and performing in general. Let's try to play with our phrase, let's try to speak this way. So, let's try to speak this way. So I engaged, tried my body, different gestures for different parts of the phrase to convey the idea a bit more. Emphasizing becomes more colorful, if you would, and more natural. As one of the videos to demonstrate this approach, I suggest the video where Tony Robbins helps the guy called Rashad with his stuttering. And of course the video is about the internal elements of that, what happened before stuttering and how it serves you, So you can take that or not take as some food for thought, but I want you to notice how Rashad behaves on stage. In particular, how he unlocks his body, how he's jumping, shouting. It's very hard to stutter when you're expressing yourself this way. So public speaking coaches use that. It can be used in speech therapy as well, I believe. The problem is that if you use it as a technique and get too animated, well, it might be too exhausting both for you and for listeners. And for some reason, a lot of people think that the hand stuttering technique that I use and I teach my students is all about using gestures, hand technique, gestures. So while gestures, of course, are awesome, the hand technique is not about using gestures. Please stay a bit longer and I'll explain. So if you want to explore gestures, body language, eye contact, I'm giving you a couple of resources. You can take a look. Number 14, articulation. The main idea is that stuttering brings tension and it covers our body in articulators that gradually become more and more rigid. So by articulating, we physically break that tension, and we're also sending a signal to the brain that I'm being a bit more assertive and expressive. Coming back to our phrase, where do you live? It could go like, where do you live? Articulating a bit more maybe on where and live, the first sound, and live as the main stress. It's widely used by public speaking coaches, voice coaches. It's just an amazing exercise. The problem is if you use it as a technique, of course it's a little bit weird. We want to be reasonable with it. As you're getting reasonable, well, it loses a lot of its power, right? But articulation as such is an amazing practice, amazing exercise, so I want you to explore a couple of resources, including my video on it. Number 15, acting. The main idea is to start noticing how you tap into different roles and how that affects how you feel and how you speak. Emily Blunt, James Earl Jones, Bruce Willis, Harvey Keitel, Samuel Jackson, just to name a few actors who openly describe their struggles with stuttering. Emily Blunt did accents in her school theater or something and was amazed to notice that she didn't stutter at that moment. James Earl Jones was surprised to notice that he didn't stutter when he was reciting his own poem in front of the class. Bruce Willis also realized that he didn't stutter when he was acting. Harvey Keitel and Samuel Jackson, when asked how they overcame stuttering, were puzzled and said, I don't know, but they both noticed that they never stuttered while acting. So, as we're playing with the phrase, where do you live? what do we do with the phrase? So let's play different emotions. And I want you to play as well. You can record yourself, and it can be really fun. You might be surprised that playing emotions is not that easy. So let's try. The first emotion, anger. Where do you live? Well, anger is not my favorite emotion. Let's play fear. Where do you live? Then let's do surprise. Really? Where do you live then? And finally, let's do joy. That's amazing! Where do you live? As you're trying to play those emotions, you can notice that you shift gears and your focus goes from the words to emotions. You actually become an emotion at that moment. You lose yourself and you become someone else. Someone who doesn't stutter. Well, acting is not widely used by speech therapy. It's like some crazy stuff. But I noticed that quite some coaches who can help people who stutter, they preach different concepts. For example, modeling, where a person who stutters tries to mimic or play or act as a confident speaker that he or she wants to be. The problem is, how do I do acting all the time? Of course, it might be quite exhausting. Yet it's a great practice because, of course, if you give it a thought, we're playing different roles every time. Like every moment, every interaction, you're playing some role. There's no fixed, set in stone me. And you can tell. Because in different settings, you act, you feel differently, and you speak differently. Your stuttering is absolutely different, oftentimes in different situations. So a great question to ask yourself, what is that role that you're trying to play in those situations, hard, stressful situations, where you want to be fluent the most and where you stutter the most? And acting coaches, they all say that pretending leads to bad acting. So in many cases, we're trying to pretend to be a normal, regular person, to be a confident speaker. But in fact, that's the role we want to play. But in fact, we're playing a role of a person who stutters, who is ashamed of stuttering and who wants to hide it by all means. And I get it, we all want to be confident speakers, but maybe it's a great idea to start thinking how we can combine together speaking confidence with a real you. That's where the next strategy, the concept of the next strategy, might be really helpful. At least it can broaden your perspective big time. And of course, if you want to explore acting a little bit more, I'm giving you several resources. You can check them out. Number 16, open stuttering. The main idea is to remove stuttering shame and desire to hide stuttering, which in turn removes stuttering anxiety, stuttering struggle, and improves your speaking experience. And yeah, if you give it a thought, a confident speaker, that role that you want to be playing, is someone who's not ashamed of being himself or herself. As long as you're ashamed of being you, all you can do is to pretend to be a confident speaker. You see, confidence comes from within. It's when you have truly nothing to hide, when you're ready to open up, to give, and to share. Open stuttering is not using any techniques to prevent stuttering. You are going to stutter. And you might be wondering, why am I putting that as a technique then, if there is no technique? Well, when we get intentional about it, it becomes a strategy. And I call it a technique. You can call it a no technique if you would. A more professional way to call it is avoidance reduction therapy, where you're learning not to avoid stuttering. Because the biggest part of stuttering is desire to hide it, to escape it, to avoid it. So we want to remove that biggest part. And as we're playing with our phrase, where do you live, it could go like, well, where do you live? So I did it intentionally, and it might sound and look like intentional stuttering, way easier, but of course The idea is that we just stutter without any avoidance. I've heard this term open stuttering from Vivian Siskin and American Institute for Stuttering. I'm sure some other therapists, speech therapists, and stuttering programs also use this approach. In fact, it's quite popular in stuttering community. The problem is, as Vivian Siskin says in her video, open stuttering is the last thing people who stutter want to do. It's really, really hard to convince yourself to do it, to try to do it. Even when you conceptually realize, you're gonna know that that's a good thing to do. So if you want to go deeper into open stuttering, I'm giving you a couple of resources. You can go and check them out. Number 17, hand technique. So the main idea of the hand technique is to align our speaking with pressing our fingers on the thigh. Why would we do that? Well, there is a speaking loop. You say something, you hear that something, and your brain always adjusts what you're saying to what you hear. It's a constant loop. And by default, people who stutter have a tiny little discrepancy, little mismatch in that loop. That's why maybe you've heard about delayed auditory feedback medical devices. That actually, what they do, they first of all involve choral effect, choral speech, so that you hear yourself. At the same time, you hear yourself at a slight delay. Such devices are quite expensive and they don't change your speaking in principle. It's like glasses for your eyes. When you put the glasses, improve your eyesight, but they don't change your eyesight in principle. The same way speech devices. You use them, they do help somewhat. You put them down, they don't change your speaking in principle. So with glasses, with devices, you are an object. With the hand technique, you start pressing, you start feeling, you become the subject. You basically interfere with your hand into that loop, and you create a new, additional, very powerful signal, channel of feedback that aligns your speech mechanism with your ear, with your brain. So the hand technique works similar to dental braces, for example, which are reshaping the teeth, the jaw, whatever they are reshaping. Here, with the hand technique, you're reshaping, you're interfering into your speaking structure, creating this additional source of feedback, and you're reshaping your speaking and how you feel at the moment of speaking interaction. So let's play with our phrase, where do you live? And we'll use 4, 3, and 2 fingers. Let's start with 4, 1 finger, 1 syllable. Where do you live? Let's do 3. Where do you live? Let's do 2. Where do you live? So as you notice, the fewer fingers, the closer we get to regular pace. Where do you live is pretty much regular pace. But still, the regular pace, which gives us a lot of pressure and rush and anxiety, is just one stress. Where do you live? Where do you live? By doing even 2 fingers, we increase that support. Where do you live? Where do you live? Like 100%. When you do 3 fingers, it's a lot of support you give to your brain and speech mechanism. Now, pressing with our fingers on the thigh by itself means nothing. But when you combine pressing with relaxation, all of a sudden you realize that speaking itself can become the source of relaxation. You inject relaxation each time you're pressing on thigh. On top of that, when you add the feeling of connections, feeling like how you split, how you make a point, how you emphasize, how you engage your body and eye contact, you realize that the training speech can be expressive, can be assertive. it doesn't have to be weird or monotonous. So with this training speech, you're simply restoring the rhythmical structure of your natural speaking. And this is the tool that you have with you 24/7. So first of all, this is the technique that I used. So I use it, my students use it inside the Free From Stutter program. When I was in my speech therapy as a person who stutters back in the day, when I was 27, and I was learning the hand technique myself, I thought that it was a rather traditional therapy, speech therapy. Then I realized that it was a rather unorthodox approach. It originated back in Soviet Union and Russia. Then it was picked, and I believe there are centers in Poland, Czech Republic, and typically it involves physical gathering. So I just put my perspective to it and put it totally online. The problem is that most people don't understand what it is. Oftentimes people say, yeah, I got it, awesome. I love using gestures, but it doesn't work for me. So I need to explain again. That's why I'm making this videos for you. So if you want to go deeper into the hand technique, how it works, head over to freefromstutter.com. There are plenty of resources there. You can check them out. Which one should I choose? Well, there is something we can learn from each of the techniques. I hope from this video you're getting a broader perspective. And really, we want to sense how we can address different elements, different parts of stuttering. And when it comes to the choice, of course, I'm biased towards the hand stuttering technique. That's the one I use. But it's not only because that's the one I use, but I also see the benefits of this technique compared to other techniques. Compared to fluency shaping and stuttering modification techniques. The main advantage is that you don't have to spend hours and hours practicing, hoping to catch the same feeling. You have the hand with you in the actual speaking interaction. You take it with you. You get inside of that speaking moment and you can feel how speaking is relaxing. You can inject that relaxation. You can feel how it's expressive. So you can feel that support right at the moment of real life interaction. Compared to modeling, public speaking, acting, where you just go there and do it, well, we're giving with the hand technique additional layer of support to our brain, to our speech mechanism. We also give ourselves additional layer of acceptance when you're using the hand technique openly. Because as I said, of course, there is some fear in that pretending to be confident, I can do it, I'm a confident speaker, right? Instead, you want to start thinking how you can tap into real you and not be ashamed of it. How you can be proud of being a person who stutters, who is working on its speech. Compared to open stuttering, which is a great concept, we're adding additional idea that stuttering doesn't have to be there. Yes, we want to remove shame, want to remove fear, but we also can become much more aware of the speaking structure and how we can bring relaxation, assertiveness, expression into the very structure of our speaking. We still can bring a little bit of that feeling that you can speak on your terms, but at the same time, be authentic. How? Now, with all my bias towards the hand technique, I'm the first to say that how you use a technique is way more important than which one you pick. That's why I love the open stutter approach, because it gives you the right perspective right from the start. You can use the same technique from the place of fear or from the place of courage, from the place of shame or from the place of confidence. In every single speaking interaction, you're making a choice. It's your intention, either not to stutter or to be yourself. The first choice, trying not to stutter, trying to say it fluently. In long term, brings you back to stuttering and struggle. The second choice leads you to speaking confidence. So tapping into those deeper layers of stuttering, that's what makes real profound change and long-lasting transformation, not hours and hours of practicing your techniques. Truth be told, the techniques and the training speech can bring long-lasting results only when you approach them as stuttering/speaking on your terms. And that's a skill that you can learn and master. From the outside, these two, like trying not to stutter, trying to say it fluently, and trying to speak/stutter on your terms, be yourself. These kind of, from the outside, might sound and look the same, but they're just the opposites. You might be using the same technique, using these different approaches, leading to drastically different results. So I gave you a palette of different colors, an array of different instruments for drawing and painting. Now it's time for you to draw or paint and create your masterpiece. Thank you so much for watching. For more videos, subscribe to this YouTube channel. For more interaction, join the Free From Stutter Facebook group. If you're using a technique that I haven't mentioned in the video, please leave a comment and let me know. And I'll see you in the next video.